I'm going to pop it up and then we'll get rolling.
What's up, everyone? We're live and hope everyone's doing good today. We're live with Dave Levinson at Custom Scales. He's getting something special ready just for us. In the meantime, one of the things that we should all support is USARK. They're a great organization to help us fight any unwanted legislation that can sometimes pop up more often than not recently too. And, because of that, here's Dave.
Yeah, nice, bud. Very strong, very strong. But I got to have a little more confidence in that. But no, honestly, you probably followed the USARK page. I feel like every couple days I go on there, there's something new going on. Another state trying to fight some small law that could turn into a big law. Nobody talks about USARK enough. And, I got to get Phil Goss on a podcast soon. I feel like it's been about a year or two since I've talked to him.
Yeah, and you were one of the first people I at least saw have on one of the older Herp House Rocks. I happened to watch the one you did with Joe Ball today. Just for a quick refresher, I guess, as I was thinking of questions.
Okay, cool. Well, we also did a Joe Ball one, don't forget. And that wasn't that long ago.
So I suppose we'll just kind of jump into it. Recently, about 6 months or so ago, you moved. How has it been since the move? And start from there.
Okay. Well, like I said, the move made me breed early this year, which I didn't really think was going to be an issue. I don't know if it had that much to do with it, but wasn't the best year. Got babies. Very happy with the babies I got. I cut my season short, and I also started my breeding season 3 weeks early. And one problem with that was my males weren't ready. I ended up buying like 8 males from Tiki. Manny sent them up, and a lot of them got going pretty quick. One male went through quite a few females, but where my females woke up early this year because of the move, because I literally abruptly woke them up, my males, man, they just weren't having it yet. I think my year capped out at like 50 babies, which, I would like to admit a lot more. I am happy with some of the stuff I got. I got a lot of dark babies. I missed out on some of the yellow stuff again this year. I really want to start making more yellows. But no, like you said, it was not a bad year. I got slug outs, I got dead babies, and I got live babies. So it was, I bet you between all the slugs and all the dead babies and live I got this year, I bet you it was like a 50-50 split, man. Slugs and dead compared to live. I bet you there was about 100 babies or 100 things born here this year.
Wow, that's a significantly higher stillborn rate than I had. My year wasn't, as amazing as planned either, but it was decent. Why do you think you had so many? Just the move?
Honestly, I think that one lock theory is not a bad theory, but I'm 3 years running on it just because I'm always short on males and heavy on females. And this one lock thing, I'm done with it. In some circumstances, I'm sure I'll be okay with one lock. And a lot of these females that gave me good litters this year were just one lock. And there were quite a few females I did 2 locks with that didn't do anything this year. Meal prep may be going into the cool down I got to get a little better with. I think a little later in the season with the move pre-cool down, I think I was a little more simple about my diet, and I wasn't adding all the fun ingredients I normally add. And I know sometimes people say that doesn't matter as much, but, I always talk about I like beef liver, and I always add a little bit of beef liver during the year. I add a little chicken liver. At the end of my season, about a month or two before actually cooling down, I don't think I did any of that anymore. I think I was just straight dog food, adding supplements. That could have something to do with the babies that weren't fully developed. Where I had a problem in the past where I rose my heats too high during the breeding. This year, I didn't bring my heats up until all the breeding was done. It looked like females were on either one side or the other, and then I did bump it up to about 95 on the hot spot. But I don't know, man. I don't want to seem like I'm bad at this, but I will say these last couple of years have not been my best years doing this. And other than personal things going on, there's really no excuse. Um, I have more males coming up next year, and I always talk about it too with like boa constrictors. You're better off with more males. I think next year it's gonna be one male to two females, or one male to maybe three females. This year, I think I mentioned to you, I bred 40 females. One male had nine females he locked. Another male had 8, and another male had 8. So 3 males knocked out half the females I locked, and the other 15 or 20 males I had, couple locks here, a couple locks there. One of my dark males from Diana, he actually had really good success rate this year. I think I bred him to 5 females. I think I got twice on every one of those females. And I want to say I had 3 perfect litters from him. And then the other 2 females just didn't throw anything. But no, I'm thinking I got to focus on my diet a little more going into it. And again, next year I'm going to have more males going. I want to say that's going to be the make or break.
Well, and I did notice, I wrote down all my stats, so I had it. Of 8 of the breedings I had, they were 1 lock, and none of those went.
Okay.
So, just
0.
What's that?
You said 0 on single locks on 8 females?
Correct.
Wow. Okay.
And it's a combination of either slugs or they didn't go at all. Because I bred 18 this year, and 6 of them were good. So of the ones that were, I had 10 that I paired more than once. So it kind of, the results agree with your theory on it. Definitely helps having more than one.
Yeah.
There are a couple of them that I did pair later, though, too, that maybe I'll get a surprise, but I kind of doubt it at this point.
That's fair. I think my last litter was just literally 2 days ago. Like I said, it all happened fast. You know how this goes. It's all in like a 2-3 week window. Everything happens similar to your window of breeding. And, my first litter was amazing. And then my second litter sucked. And then my third litter was great. And then my fourth and fifth and sixth litter and seventh litter all sucked. So I do think, like we were talking about, I do think that 2 locks or 3 locks are necessary. I think the one thing I just want to avoid, which I always kind of talk about in the hobby when it comes to skink breeding, I'm not a big fan of people that overlap their locks, like literally lock on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then move on to the next female. I still think there needs to be 3 or 4 days in between that, especially if the male was hard on the female. But no, like I said, Cheryl's having a great year this year. I talked to a few other people that are having okay years, and I talked to Heather the other day. It looks like, her year is always a little late. She had her concerns about the weather maybe affecting her, but the fact that she's housing these animals outside together, I think even with a weird season of weather, they'll still be together when they're in their window and will choose to breed or not breed. As long as it wasn't ungodly hot, which I know it wasn't over the winter down there, I think she's still gonna have a good year.
Now, when you mention on the heat, did you on your bad litters, do you think it was because maybe your ambients were a little cooler this year?
Side-by-side females in the same rack system on the same heat panel. One had a good litter, one had a bad litter.
Okay.
So, I try to focus on different levels in the rack. I reset up the racks when I got in the building, and I've done it in the past too, where lower 3 levels are on one temperature, where the top 5 levels are on a different temp. A different thermostat. I don't want to run the risk of maybe it being a little too hot on the bottom or a little too hot on top because I got the probe too low. So I've done it that way for a long time just to be safe. And honestly, I used the temp gun a lot this year. Everything temp gun really good. Like I said, I was trying to be as meticulous as possible. I even fed a little more after I bred, just because we're usually in the past, I'm not overly stressed on extra meals. But I thought all that might benefit. Honestly, it didn't really make that big of a difference. That's why I kind of go back to saying maybe I should have been feeding a little better going into the breeding season.
Well, I still think it could help, but you might have if the male that does him's too thin, whether or not the female had the right nutrition could be still an issue.
No, I agree with that. How many females did you try breeding this year?
18 if we don't count the artificial insemination, which I'm not.
Did you have no success with that, I take it?
Nothing yet. That one would be at 120 days roughly. So there's still a chance, but I don't think so.
Have we figured out anything on this Dave thing? Like, have you seen anything that, like, what's your magic number after you breed them? Like, how many days after do you think they should be typically?
Like, days in between?
From breeding the skinks to having babies, from lock to babies, how long do you think it usually takes you?
So on average, my early ones will go around the 90s, but majority probably are in the 110-ish area, or 100 to 115.
Okay. And that's just because we can't catch an ovulation typically, so we're just, that's the best we can go on as a lock date.
Yeah, and some I've thought were ovulations that maybe they were just random swells and then they reabsorbed, but yeah, I've never been good at it.
It's fair. Did you do any candling on your gravid females?
No, I never have good luck with that. I bought the flashlights like Diana's recommended in the past. I usually just watch the behavior and still get surprised on some either way, you know, whether or not you think they are.
I understand that. Cheryl uses it. I don't exactly know how strong the flashlight is. I tried using one of my herping flashlights this year. I couldn't see shit. I don't think it was strong enough. I thought about getting one. I didn't go out and buy one. But you can kind of tell, like you said, the way the females look during their pregnancy, whether or not she's going to slug out or have good babies. But no, like I said, I like the flashlight technique. I thought it was neat when I had a good enough flashlight. I got to buy a better flashlight next year.
Would you do anything different if you had the flashlight?
I could have wrote down which ones were going to slug out and which ones had live babies.
Fair enough. I don't know if you would hope to see soon enough where you could try to sneak a late male in, or...
Well, like I said, I ended my season pretty abruptly on breeding. I think my first lock was on the 8th of January. And I want to say my last lock was maybe on the 28th. Essentially, I had good breeding days. And then I went in there and had one bad day while being in the middle of the move still going on. And I threw the towel in. Literally, the day beforehand was a great day of breeding. And then it's just, the males were making me work too hard for it. They weren't really having it. I probably could have bred for another week or two this year, maybe had more success, but I ran out of time. Like I said, moving the collection in December and January this year made everything very, very difficult. And unfortunately, I did miss out on some skink stuff, I think, because of it. I was on my way through my second lock when I abruptly stopped my season.
So you've moved probably more than like anyone I know that breeds skinks, at least.
Yeah.
Have you mentioned about 3 weeks this time? Has there been any bigger gaps in between? One person I know mentioned they had horrible success if they moved it more than 2 weeks.
Oh, like their whole season?
Yeah.
Well, the animals didn't give me the choice. Like I said, it was only about a 30, 35-minute move, but I did have to unstack all the racks to get them out of the old house, restack them in the back of a pickup truck or in the back of the moving van, and then it was about a 40-minute bumpy ride, maybe 50-minute bumpy ride. And then I got them in the building, put the heat back at like 60 degrees, but didn't actually turn the front of the heat on in the building that much. It was probably like 65, 70. And like I said, I went in there one day, like 2 days after getting them in there, and all the females are pacing at the front. The males are moving around. I went and did a pairing that day, and they locked immediately. So a lot of times, if the female's not at her window, she's not going to let the male do that, of course. I think it was just their time based on the fact that I woke them up. if it was my normal, like I said, my season gets a little earlier every year.
Yep.
Back, like I said, in Buffalo, New York, I bred around Valentine's Day, so mid-February. And since I've been in Missouri, it's been more of like mid to late January, but typically a little later in January. Normally one of the last weeks of January, normally I start doing my locks. And, it's worth checking with Cheryl. At one point, her collection and my collection ran on the same timeline, and she bred a lot later than me this year. But again, a lot later is like 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay. Yeah, because normally all mine go down around the same. I did purposely push them back 2 weeks the previous year and put them back on time this year. It just happened to be the random 2 weeks I picked, the work with surgery last year to try to time it better.
Yeah.
But I don't really think that was the reason why I only had 6 go. Just, some random. What about besides the temp gun, do you do any more monitoring like humidity sensors or temp sensors at the new facility?
Other than the thermostat I have that runs the front half of the building's heat or air conditioning, depending on temps outside, really, I didn't do anything too crazy. Now, I didn't really get them overly hot when I woke them up. Like, while I was breeding, I want to say my hot spot was probably between like 82 to 88, but probably closer to 82. And as I got deeper into the breeding, I'd like bump it up a degree like every couple days. And I didn't want to get any hotter than 88 because I didn't want to run the risk of maybe cooking sperm, even though I know the males can handle higher than 88. And yeah, honestly, nothing super new. I mean, there might be some stuff in the future I might add, but it's kind of like, I work a lot of different species, and I'd like them to be able to fund their part of my hobby. What I do with the skinks this year will still cover what my expenses are to keep those animals during the course of the year. If there's anything extra, I'm sure I'll add something to improve on their setup or improve on what I'm doing with them. Sometimes that means just buying a couple new animals that I might like to improve on my colony, get some new blood in. But, it just depends on where I end up this year. If I got a little extra, I'm sure I'll figure out something to make it better. But this might just be one of those years I don't. When we're not talking equipment right now, talking more animals, I had half of mine to buy a male patternless this year from Heather. With all the different colors that I work with over here, that's one project I can kind of put in everything really quick and just start having like something to work with in a couple years. I've seen some of the projects overseas, especially in the Asian market, where they've taken the patternless project and they bred it through a lot of orange lines and red lines. And their patternless are coming out bright orange. They are coming out bright red. So I would like to maybe go that route. I'm just not sure I'm going to reinvest in them this year. I was really hoping to produce at least 100 babies this year. And making half that kind of makes me not sure whether or not I'm going to expand on it right now.
Do you see an easier way to remove any of the banding on skinks other than like the patternless, either the Maruki or the Toffee, or that's probably the only way?
Yeah, Toffee project, yes, of course, because it's already been proven. Even the Australians have that project in their collection, which I find funny. But I haven't really seen anything pop up in the Northerns. You get those zipper patterns every once in a while. There's, a couple stripes have kind of popped up where it's kind of like a broken down the middle of the pattern. I haven't really seen anything that honestly could be line bred yet to really get it down. Maybe a couple generations of that zipper pattern can make it look more like teardrops. But, have you had any animals in your collection you felt like you could just breed a couple together and reduce down the pattern considerably?
Not reduce, no. One that, I bred a male that had like a W on his back, and one of the babies happened to have more of those connected.
Okay.
But I don't know if that's just going to be something, polygenic or something truly. But either way, I figured, all 6 of them, I produced, only one had that pattern, but I'm going to hold all sticks back because they're from the female that I'm hoping to prove out is like the genetic either hypo or T plus or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Would
No,
you,
oh, go ahead.
for that project, I was originally thinking do that male to this daughter I have. That way it'd be, in theory, het to visual. Or do you think it would be better to separate the pattern part from the hypo T plus or whatever, or just keep them together?
Honestly, I just kind of wing it at this point, just because, you know, a pairing you might decide not to do for a reason like that might make some of your best babies. I'd worry about separating the pattern out later when you make a lot more of that pattern and you want to kind of take its own route. But right now in that group, the pattern is kind of a bonus. You know, your focus is more on that, reducing all the black pigment out and just focusing on colors. So I would just go with whatever's going to make the most colorful animal like you've been making. And if the pattern's there, the pattern's there.
I'm going to pull it up.
It's not going to devalue your animals. And if anything, if you can replicate it enough, it's something you might want to have a few extra around.
Yeah, and, you know, you could kind of see the top two are connected, then the bottom 3, 4 are.
Okay.
You know, it's might end up poly, because isn't the Heather's Kit Kat potentially polygenic?
It is possibly. You know, that's something I need to talk to her more about. I'm sure you might remember the conversation a little better, but it's something. Was that something that just popped up when they were making het albinos, or was that something that they already had and then they bred the albino into it?
I want to say it popped up in the albinos, but I could be wrong on it.
Okay. Well, first off, I do like that animal, and I think that's going to be really unique when you start putting in different projects, especially if you keep the sides dark and keep that light on the back. You know, also the albino, I'd be curious on how that looks in the albino. I don't really know how that passes on yet. I'm sure one of us will have to ask her after this so we have a better response, but I'm actually not sure how that passes on yet.
Okay. Yeah, and either way, it's, you know, a cool bonus, even if it's not genetic, you know, a cool pattern change on them.
When you got nothing, everything is cool when you have something.
Yeah, and, you know, one thing, like previously in Skinks, you know, a lot of the, like, the dark stuff and the white stuff were pretty popular. Do you still think it's worth breeding some of those to try to get the whitest turners and the darkest pitch black?
100%. Some of my pairings I did this year was taking some Diana stuff and making some nice dark animals to try to make even darker ones. You know, I got that really unique one I got from Frank a few years ago that I had always thought was a female. After this season, I realized it's a male with a lot of female features. So honestly, I'm still probably the next 5 years going to be line breeding yellows, oranges, reds, darks, and whites to try to make the best ones possible. You know, I have different degrees of all those colors in my collection. It'd be nice if they were all just end game, I guess is the way of putting it. Like every one of them being a 7 to 10. When you go through my room and look at my animals, like I'll have bins marked red, and then I'll have a number underneath it because I grade it 1 through 10. So when I'm doing my breeding, I kind of look at it and say, I'm going to breed the 7s to this one. I'm going to breed the 10 to this 10, just in hopes of making something better.
So then is that pretty much how you plan out your pairings then, or sometimes it's whatever goes?
Well, sometimes I have times where females don't really go with the male I'd want, as in I put the boys in and they just don't react properly. You know, I have 2 really nice dark males that came from Diana. The one male, I couldn't even breed him this year because he was just beating the fuck out of the females and not even locking them. Like, he was doing the grabbing the sides. He was kind of swinging them around a little bit, but he's a very large male. And he just never tried to lock any of these girls. He just bit them and positioned them, but never tried to throw the hip over. So everything I had planned for him, I had to put another male on. And I kind of go into the season expecting that. But you know, one of my girls, like the really nice Turner white female I have here, like I am trying to run every color project through her. I'm trying to run my best yellows, my best oranges, my best reds, which have already gone the red route. Um, I do plan on doing that for all my colors except for the dark project, just to kind of make better colors in the end, like we talked about in the past. But sometimes I wing it into these years. Things change over those 2 months of cooling them down. How about
So
you get it all ready to go before you even get going? Like you ready to go like while they're cooling? Do you wing it?
there's a wide combination into that, I think would be the honest way. Some I have in mind, especially this year. I tried to plan to hopefully produce more genetic ones.
Yeah.
Granted, the male that produced the first visual, he didn't breed any, so that kind of, I went with his brother. So, I have plan Bs in certain ones, but yeah, like you said, not all of them went at the right time. And then this year of like some of my one lock ones were more just testing to see certain things. Some of the differences I noticed in some of them, I don't know if the small white hints, that like the white spots I see on the sides, at what point is it a marker and at what point is some of it possibly just an extra polygenic trait on top?
Yeah. No, I get that. You talk about males not breeding. That Cohen stock animals we got years ago that made the white skink. Probably maybe something related to that Fen project. The original male, like you said, he bred the first year and he took down like 6 females. And I want to say I got 5 litters. The following year, actually for the next 4 years, he wouldn't breed at all. And then one of his males I held back the first year is like the spitting image of dad. And he is like big male, big head, nice body, built exactly how I'd want a male built. He's afraid of the ladies. He runs away from them. He needs complete privacy. I've got to put the females in his bin, close the bin, and just listen for racket. Like, he does not want you watching when he does this. And a lot of times I'm struggling to figure out what his window is because all the females wagging their tail in front of him. He just gets this wide-eyed look and he just takes off. But no, like you said, going into these seasons, you don't always know what you're going to work with. You got to be ready to change it up. And that's why backup males are good for about every project you're in.
Well, it's hard because, like, some of the pairings, I tried not to just produce something, I guess would be the best way to put it. Like, not that, say individual solid orange male's bad or anything, just, I don't know, I guess I was pickier this year, aiming for less too.
So about like 7 years ago, when things like people want to know the exact parents you used and things like that, back in the day, like I would lock one male on multiple females and then lock a different male on those same females. And I honestly think I had really good success rate back in the day when I did that. But, again, where everybody wanted to know where their lineage was, who the exact parents were, so on and so forth, I kind of got away from that. I think next year for certain projects, I might go back to that, especially with animals I'm just trying to produce for pets. So, we'll call my classic stock. I'll probably breed multiple males to a single female next year just because I think that's going to up my success rate compared to worrying about one male going back twice. But like you're saying, on our designer projects that we're working on, I am going to typically stick with one male unless his brother looks just like him.
Yeah, and really then the only issue you'll face is if, some odd pops out.
Yes, and that happens in a lot of species, and I've had that happen in ball pythons and so on and so forth. And you're right, now you just set yourself back like 3 or 4 years. I couldn't agree more with you on that, but I'm willing to let the ball roll because the reality is I'm not getting babies right now. I'm getting slug outs. So I'd rather just accidentally have something happen and then just have to figure it out compared to just not making anything like I did this year.
Well, and that's the hard part. Like some of mine have multiple lines mixed in, and even with the lineage, it's kind of a guess exactly where it came from.
I agree with that. Like I said, man, I like dumb pairings sometimes in this species. I think dumb pairings are going to get us to interesting animals we didn't know that existed. Um, Honestly, a lot of years with a few species, like even my Woma pythons, I don't like to breed the same male back to the same female year after year. A lot of times I like to completely change it up just in case something pops up in there. And I do kind of use multiple males on females some years just in case. Um, I don't know, man. It's tough. Like I said, I like making mistakes. You're right. If I happen to make something really nice, it's going to take me a little longer to figure it out.
Well, and how is kind of your hold back been throughout the years? Because a lot of what I have is holdbacks, and I know some breeders don't hold back much.
Well, to be honest with you, a lot of that is kind of like determined as the year goes or as they get bigger. Long story short, we made a really nice yellow in one of the litters, so we already know we're setting that to the side. I've already seen some really nice dark stuff we produced this year. I'll probably put a few more dark animals to the side, or at least give them a few months to mature up. You know what I do? I have like 10 I like every year, and I sell everything else. And when everything else is gone, I decide whether or not I'm going to sell that 10 to. And I've kind of always been that way. Sorry, it's because I have my dinner in front of me. I didn't feed them yet, so now they're losing their mind.
Oh, no worries.
I got this.
So then, how do you, to help, other breeders, how would you help them kind of breed for polygenic traits?
Well, I mean, it's the same way anything you do with that kind of stuff. Just breed the best of the best and hold back the best of the best. Try to outbreed every once in a while. We talked about it with the Red Project. We started seeing some underbites when they were too related after a couple generations, and outbreeding them, I thought, helped that out a lot. It was something that the community wasn't really being anal about, but it was only a matter of time before the community was going to start to care about that kind of thing. And like I said, I keep on going on and on about Turner White. I really think if you want to make everything better, Turner White's the answer. Even in your project with what you're developing over there, where, you have a little Turner White in that lineage. Now, that might not be the reason your animals are looking as good as they are, but it could be contributing a little bit. And you'll figure it out eventually, but you need to, I still need to get one of those males from you. That's the problem. As soon as I can buy one of those males from you, I can start breeding some of my stuff and see what it does.
I don't know if I'll ever know if it's truly the Turner White, though. Like you said, I've been holding multiple back, even to the point I'll breed 5 animals from a litter, keep the best from those. Maybe I'll keep one of the 5, sell those adults, and keep improving in mixing and matching.
Yeah. Well, again, we've had this conversation a million times, and I'm just going to have it here because now it's in stone. You got to breed your best male to the ugliest animal in your collection. You got to take the most classic bullshit animal you have and see what those babies do when bred back together. You could breed 2 really awful looking animals together from that male, and they come out looking similar to what that male was or what you see in that project. At least it lets you know how it's being passed on and that it isn't just a line bred trait. And we've talked about that, of course. It's kind of shitty to go that way because, well, like I said, the best Turner White that I have in my collection came from a litter of normal-looking animals that Ray made. There was Turner White on both sides, but I remember being at Daytona, and he had all these animals on his table that were litter mates for, I want to say, like $400, and then he had this one for $1,800. And I ended up going with the one that was $1,800 because I thought it was the prettiest thing on his entire table. And it ended up being exactly what I thought it'd be. It turned out to be almost a completely white animal. So that's a litter that the parents, I think, were not that special, but they had Turner White lineage in it. And when he bred them together, he made a 10 out of 10 Turner White. Now, again, only one in the litter, and we're not trying to argue this is not a line bred trait. It's a line bred trait, but sometimes, even from ugly parents, if there was something in their lineage that was nice, they could still pop out a really exceptional animal.
Oh, and I think that's some of the problem with some breeders. They bought the ugly ducklings to breed them together, hoping that that lineage was good enough, and they got
Nothing.
Some of them were sold relatively expensive to them, and then they got out of breeding because their babies kind of sucked, or they were more classic looking. At sucks, not the best term, but you get where I'm going.
Well, yeah, you're right. More classic looking. Yeah, no, there was a little confusion because, like I said, a lot happened in a short period of time in the hobby, and again, some things were represented as recessive, but you weren't seeing any of that in the pairings. Again, skink genetics. Man, if you had even picked one person in the hobby you think really knows what the fuck they're talking about skink genetics at this point in the United States, like, who would we even talk to? Like, me and you bullshit. We have our ideas in our head. We can get Cheryl Matula on. She'll have her ideas in her head. But, like, there's really not that one, like, prominent voice that, like, has experience, been doing it for years, knows what's going on, can break down everything. This isn't sex, by the way. This is steak. But, yeah, no, man, it seems like even some of the guys that really knew what the fuck they were talking about didn't always know what they were talking about. A lot of it was kind of assumptions.
Yeah.
And that's one of the toughest things about skinks. Like I said, a lot of us have made up some assumptions on what and how we're making things. But my red stuff, man, I'm telling you, like, we bred reds to, like, the most classic animals we have, and one of them is McGillicuddy, the oldest female I have in my collection. And when you breed a red back to one of McGillicuddy's babies, and those babies came out pretty basic looking, they were making some absolutely amazing first-generation red animals. So I'm not going to sit here and argue that was a recessive by any means, even though the babies didn't really express much color. But, again, just that lineage being there ended up making some really nice-looking animals.
Well, and that's how I got some of mine, crossing some pretty good red lineage to orange and selecting some out, and then on other lines was going straight from red to, like, the really nice classic from you guys.
Yeah. Like I said, unfortunately, like, because we're kind of learning how a lot of this stuff works, man, you kind of need to outbreed it to some bullshit that's completely unrelated, and then you got to see what comes out of that bullshit. Because similar to what I'm saying, I make really nice reds from classics. You could breed that orange to classics you make from it and make amazing orches. It's when you breed two of those normals together that came from that dad to reproduce something like that really tells you what's going on with the project. Like I said, I don't really know your genetics, and I will fight you on them a little bit. I don't know if it's going to prove out recessive.
Well, I think I confused you in my question because I was talking just polygenics.
Oh, gotcha. Then, yeah, that just wasn't me paying enough attention. That's me being a bad guest.
Yeah, no. Yeah, not the one I'm trying to prove out. Yeah, I'm not 100% on that one. But yeah, I was more so to try to help because some breeders don't want to get into polygenic traits because don't know how to price the babies, or they don't know what they're gonna get. Where you kind of gotta, like you said, hold them back a bit to see, and the best way kind of price them how they look.
Yeah, I think I went on the wrong rant there. I think that's the reality of things. Here's the thing. Okay, well, how about this? So if you were going to come into the hobby and you weren't going to try to focus on line bred traits, and you just want to make classics, where do you get your classics? Do you have to have a Ray Gerge classic? Do you have to have a Blazin Blue Tongue classic? Like, it's not like there's like lineages out there that have a breeder's name on it that doesn't have some kind of line bred trait attached to it. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
I do think having a little, like, there's some carpet pythons that have people's names on it. It's not even a mutation, but who it came from. It's like that in certain Kluber projects, so on and so forth. Blue Tongue Skinks don't really have that in the classics. You know what I mean? Like, there's not really a famous line of classics. So for me personally, I'm gonna always want to chase colors. Just because you got to sit in the babies a little longer, so be it. Hey man, we talk about it. If we would have sat on that male we sold you years ago longer, we probably wouldn't have sold that fucking thing and ended up being so nice. But we jumped the gun and we ended up selling a really nice animal for, I think it was closer to classic prices. So that's the risk you take if you're not willing to hold on to your animals longer.
Yeah, and that, sadly is going to happen, no matter what. You can't, predict how everything's going to turn out, even, like from a line being polygenic perspective, trying to reduce the black pattern. There's no exact formula on how much the babies are going to get. You got to wait a little bit to see. And even then, I've got a couple brown dots after a year.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how often do you sell somebody a skink nowadays where they talk about how they want to be future breeders?
So it depends on the
quality.
Like with the prices of going down, you are going to get nicer animals at a good pet range. I've had some people that, will spend $500 on a great looking animal that are just, want a pet.
Yeah.
But there is definitely maybe 25%. I don't know if that's exact.
So trying to think where I want to take this. The reason I asked that is how many people are actually talking about breeding is, as newbies coming into a species, what are the most common questions you get? Is it always, what sex is this? Is it, what will I get if I breed this to this? Like, how do you find those entry level questions are going?
Yeah, you are right. The majority is from a pet perspective. Yeah. But at least like we got one person that asked, for example, in the comments, this one has to be about breeding. Do you feed your female, or do your females feed all the way up to giving birth, or will they refuse food prior to giving birth? And that's a newer name. I don't know. So there's definitely still new ones coming in.
No, I'm not saying it in like a bad way, but like, I'm just trying to break down the reason, what people are thinking that haven't been doing this for a little while. Like, I want to know what the new breeder is thinking about the species, where their motivation is. I mean, I'm guessing what people want to do. I don't really know what people want to do. I don't know if people just want to make the dark stuff. I don't know if people are still trying to make a solid black northern. I'm still trying to make a solid black northern. Like I said, I don't know people's motivations for new people coming in because, like I said, I've always been really morph motivated. I do want to start tackling the morph project sooner than later. I just want them to pay for themselves, which I mentioned earlier.
I do see a combination. One person I know, he's getting into more genetic stuff, where I think all of what he has is at least some type of het for something, and then there is other breeders that are coming in more on the less expensive route, we'll say it, for the polygenic, where end of the day, there's still people that are going to want a pretty animal as a pet, and they make great pets that the lower stuff they should still do pretty good.
Okay, no, I get that. Well, how about this? Where do you see the skink community going at this point? Like, do you think it's going to be the morph game strong? Do you think it's going to be the other parts of the hobby that come in and buy morphs, or do you think there'll be a full adoption by all the breeders that are doing this right now to go the morph route?
I definitely don't think a full adoption, because I know some people are still against it, but there is a significant amount that are okay with them being, crossed, as long as you're honest about it.
Yeah.
I You know, and this is one of the questions I asked you, if you kind of thought it was going to end up kind of like boas, where you got the locality diehards, and then, you know, kind of people have their own mix of both, and they'll keep them separate.
Well, there's a lot of communities like that. I mean, look at people that breed Okatee corn snakes. They just want to breed them to other Okatees. So I think there's a lot of species in the hobby where people have that mindset. But with Northerns, like I said, there's nothing that really there isn't like a name attached to Northerns, what I was trying to say earlier. Like, you know, it's not like there's the Ray Gerge Classic or the James Feng Classic or the Jeff Green. You know, we have put Jeff Green's name on the Reds, of course, but like I said, there's no like real like special wild type Northern that has been kept to look wild type purposely for years to even want to just focus on that. I mean, even if you're doing just classic Northerns, you're probably still, again, playing a little color in there.
Yeah.
In my opinion, I don't know. Like I said, I feel like I'm giving wrong answers to a question because I just don't really have an opinion on it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and it's hard because some people worry on how the animals are going to end up as adults. So that's why they just stick with that. So you don't have to worry if someone doesn't like how their animal progresses in a year, but, you know, you can only do so much. You know, you try your best to inform someone.
Yeah. You know what the biggest problem with some of these conversations? You're the only person I talk to skinks about anymore. Like, literally, I'm not even gonna lie to you. You're probably the only skink conversation I have in an average week. I chat with Cheryl a little bit, but usually it's about success rate, but not really community stuff. And Manny, I mean, I called Manny, he didn't return my phone call yet. You know, he was in a different country, but I think that's kind of bullshit. But, you know, I'm sure he'll call me back someday.
I know he's back now. He was on 2 weeks ago.
Okay. Was that episode 1 for season 2?
Yep.
All right. I like that, by the way. When you decide to just take random breaks, you just say, oh, that's my off season.
Yeah, it sounded good in my head.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. How many episodes are going to be in this season?
We'll let you know.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah, I always have a plan, and what happens between now and then is a surprise.
No, I get that. Well, you know, we're going to have a little more of a real session. So you said you did like 18 females this year. I know going into the season, you were concerned a little bit about overproducing. So was your focus this year more about the females that said they were ready, or there were just certain pairings that you really wanted to do, and that's what you did this year?
So it was a combination of reasons for overproducing. One, you know, if I say we produce 200 babies and there's only a real market for 200, the price is going to drop significant because I know more than just I was going to produce them for one. But, you know, didn't want to overdo it, not knowing health-wise whatever's going to happen. You know, you never know. But, I don't know, yeah, a combination, don't want to kill the market, didn't want to overproduce. I was aiming for like 60 instead of 40 or 39, but you know, it is what it is.
So put every breeder into this answer. How many blue tongue skinks do you think could be produced in the United States every year before you exceed how many we can sell?
So I think that number's pretty high. Honestly, the hard part, what do you want to do in it too? Like, are you going to want to do multiple expos throughout the year where that's going to help you get rid of or sell some of that number? And then also what market you're in. If, you know, Missouri's expos might be a little better than Minnesota's, being at a new location this year or newer location.
You think that a hobby could handle like 2,500 baby Northerns a year total?
With the growing hobby, yes, but I don't know what that price point's going to be.
Well, I don't think it'll go any lower than 250 at this point. Do you see it going lower than 250?
For some, I could see a little lower, yes.
All right.
But the reason I say that, in general, quality's gotten better, and in my opinion, what's a classic is broader now from 6 years ago.
Well, I will say that a lot of prices on a lot of this line bred stuff has come down so much that, like, at one point, what we talked like reds were, I think, as high as like $2,000 for a nice red. I think a red now is that like a $400 to $800 animal, depending on the quality, and maybe 800 on the high side.
So I think selected ones you might get a little higher, but that's not going to be. You're not going to sell at 10,000 at $1,000 each, for example.
No, and I don't think anybody in the industry could ever produce that much. And that 2,500 animal number is like community wide, not just one breeder.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever truly going to be a strong mass producer in the hobby for that species. I think too many bodies would have to be put on that project employee wise. We'd have to be so devoted to it for a whole month or a month and a half. I just don't see a company doing that. And I understand there are some bigger companies out there producing them enough now. We know there's X amount of companies out there producing a lot of the northern whites in the United States right now. Yeah. But I still don't know if it's necessarily going to ever be a good mass producing animal. But, if you made 10 litters a year and I did 10 to 20 litters a year, and what you got Ron doing like 10 down there. Manny, I'm not sure where Manny's number is right now. We'd have to ask him.
So he's up to 18 outdoor pits, and he's built 18 more.
Okay, was that 1.2 ratio or 1.1?
Depending on the pit, varies between the one.
Okay.
So a lot of them, I think, have 2 females.
Yep. I think I would put a little more faith in that if you had them, you could sell them. That was one of the conversations we had going into the season. You were worried you were going to get maybe stuck with animals.
Well, and that was if we produced as many as last year.
And how'd you do last year? Remind me.
Over 100.
Huh. Yeah, but I feel like it was just a few years ago that like Stacy had waiting lists year after year after year after year for the skink she was making.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think we're making more skinks in the hobby now than we were then, because a lot of the guys aren't really doing it like they were then.
Yeah, a lot of the people I've talked to have paired less, like even to the point some are going more small batch, like TC was talking about a few years ago.
Like just a smaller collection?
Yeah, like going from, basically trying to produce 30 babies a year instead of 100.
Well, at one point in the hobby, it was very easy to sell that 100, and I think you just have to grind a little harder now if you're going to make that 100. I don't think it's impossible to sell 200 of these babies a year. If I made 200, I believe I would sell 200 every year. And that's going to be a mix of me trying to make the most highest quality I can and then just my classics. And I prefer to make more classics, to be honest with you, because I think it's easier to sell a $200, $250 animal.
Well, that's some of the hard part.
Yeah, I guess I would just have a little more faith in the hobby and a little more faith in the market. I think literally the community got so used to selling an animal 2 minutes after posting it online that now when these ads sit for about a month, they get a little scared that the market's gone away. I don't think we're making that many more skinks. We even talked there was the Bill Brandt factor. He had a big collection, didn't put out that many animals, but he did buy a lot of animals to make that collection. Barczyk, we talked about the same thing, bought a lot of animals, produced X amount. I don't know exactly what he was making a year. I know he wasn't producing as many babies as he thought he would, but he was still having good years. But, man, there might be less skinks being produced in the market this year than it was 7 years ago when it was at its peak, in all honesty.
Oh, I would guess on it. based on the random I know, but unless someone has some killer year this year that I don't know of.
Have you talked to James Fenn lately? Is he going to be breeding hard? Has he been breeding hard for the last couple of years?
So the last couple times I tried talking to him, he doesn't respond.
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's fair. What about the whites? Because I know a few years ago he did reproduce one of the whites, but he also did that pairing like 100 times before that and never made another one.
I know he did have some more, and I know he did lose some though too.
Okay.
And or at least hearsay, I heard he lost some.
Gotcha.
So I don't think I saw much available that he produced, but I thought some might have been his wholesale last year.
Okay. Because that's another tough one. We're talking genetics, that white project. Like I was really hoping to see what KO was doing this year. I know she did visual to visual on the project she has over there.
Yeah.
And I really want to see a full litter of visuals at that. I'd be curious if you wouldn't get a full litter just because Fenn did so many breedings for so many years where he said he bred the visual white back to offspring and never made another white and then finally made another one or a couple more. Just very odd the way that project has kind of progressed in the hobby. Even like we talked about in the past, those kind of like bleached out white ones that Ron was making from his Easterns. I think one of his original pairings, he made that unique like animal that just kind of faded. And then a few years later, he popped out another one. Like
the first one died.
Yeah, I remember the first one died on him. But no, like I said, that's another project that's been floating around the industry possibly for the last like 10, 15 years because Fenn made his white like decades ago, it feels like. And it hasn't progressed. And genetics aren't passing on the way we think they should. Like I said, hopefully KO had some luck with that pairing this year. I would really like to see a full litter of these white animals.
Well, and that was another one I tried getting on, but ever since I showed her mine, she hasn't responded.
What do you mean, like your penis?
No, my visual skink I'm trying to prove out.
Okay.
Because I asked her the way mine progresses and the ways hers progress, there is some similarities. So I'm like, well, is it the same thing? But even at an older age, mine has more color still. So I'm optimistic they're different.
Yeah. Well, I think it's completely different. I don't even think it's in the same ballpark. I think it's its own project. Like I said, we produced our animal and it looked about identical as a baby as hers do. And it also looked identical to what Fenn made originally and what Cohen made. Of course, it looked like Cohen stuff because we bought Cohen stock to make that animal. But like I said, we've done other pairings since then, and I've even bred that back to some of the animals that James Fenn considered hets. And we've never reproduced it. I've got like one more pair in my collection that I think could possibly reproduce it someday. But like I said, that last male I have for that project just never wants to breed.
On the hard part.
Yeah, see, that thing's stunning.
Yeah, and the camera's not the best, but you can still see she's got a bit of orange.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely completely reduced black pigment, but I do think that Fenn thing or what that other thing is just kind of its own thing.
Yeah, and I don't. Hopefully he's still breeding, and what I heard, it doesn't sound like Ray had much interest to breed this year, but that's just like indirectly. Well, one thing I wanted to ask you is kind of boa related. When the original like hypos and T plus boas came in, were they less pretty?
So here's a boa story. When the very first T positives were produced, they were produced out in Texas by a couple random people that were pet owners, and they brought them into the Barker's pet store. and Tracy Barker showed no interest in them multiple times before she finally got the animals. And then they weren't really overly embraced by the hobby right away. Like, the boa community wasn't that excited about them. And with the hypo projects, kind of a similar story. Literally a couple random people for like the salmon boa bought an animal from Rich Eiley's pet store that was a little weird looking. They bred it, and half the babies came out hypo. I think he bought the whole litter. The following year, they bred them again. Half the litter came out hypo. And then he bought the entire collection from them, the adults that they had, the 2 adults, and all the babies. So back then, when those projects hit the market, I don't know why the VPI got shunned at first, because the VPI babies, in my opinion, are beautiful, but it wasn't different enough, I think, at that point. But no, there was certain mutations that kind of floated around in collections for years before people realized what they had. I don't know if I answered that question.
Yeah, you did. Because the reason I asked, of the 6 I got from that mom, only one is, I'm thinking might be one, because as some of the other ones have aged, like one looks similar, kind of, just a different shade of a color, but it gained more black now.
Okay.
Whereas this one looks similar, but is not as nice of an orange when it was younger. I'm pulling it up now, so it.
I figured.
And this one, it could just be the downfall with the reduced black stuff in the lines. It could just be that too.
Yeah.
But one maybe thing on some of mine, how they get like the red stripes around the banding?
Oh, yeah.
That seems like you don't see it in the visuals. And those don't look as red. They're a little more orange. I don't know if that's enough, though, to, either way, I'm holding them all back to see.
Yeah. I hate to say it, there's still a lot of breeding to be done in that project.
Yeah.
That original light one that you showed about 5 minutes ago, that's an unbelievable looking animal. I just don't know. Again, I go back to that little bit of Turner blood in there. That could literally just be a little Turner blood showing up in that animal to where it still shows all the color, but that Turner is eliminating all your black pigment. And that's a reach, I know. But I really think Turner's a lot stronger than anybody really wants to lead on to believe.
So the Turner was from a Turner Sunset to a Fen Orange, but it did have some of the similar, like, instead of black banding, I guess it'd be more of a brownish, grayish ghost out.
Yeah.
It's go ahead.
Oh, no, and I think I showed you pictures of like the second generation, like red to Turner white animals, and they're like a lavender kind of color, and there's absolutely no black pigment on them whatsoever. They're just really, I'll take them out in the sun for you tomorrow and take a couple pictures, but like, that's just from breeding like the best reds through a really nice Turner white female, and then breeding some of that offspring back together. And we're making these animals with absolutely no black pigment in them whatsoever. And it's completely changed the color of the animal and made, in my opinion, a whole different color tone for a skink. So, like I said, I think it has a lot of power, and maybe that's not all that's going on with yours. It could be something that we can label hypo in the future because it's lacking black pigment. I don't know if I'd call it T positive, though, because I don't think the eye color represents what a T positive would be.
The only reason I initially thought that was because don't some of the T positives still not have red eyes? Or am I mistaken?
It's not necessarily a red, but it is a different color pigment. Like if I take a picture of a T positive boa constrictor eye next to a non-T positive, it is a lighter eye color.
Okay.
With yours, are you getting more lightness in the eye? Are you able to see more pupil, or is it more of just a dark eye?
Pretty much normal colored eye. That the iris is more tannish than some of my other ones, but nothing enough that one of the reasons I think hypo more is what it does to the red banding, whether or not that's polygenic or incomplete dominant, whatever.
Yeah.
It works like one, but that could just be how well I got it bred in now.
All right. So you have related males to your best male that you used for breeding this past year, you said, right? Siblings?
Define best male.
Well, that one you pulled out a minute ago that's completely whited out almost with like color on the back, no black pigment, that's your best in my opinion, right?
Well, that's a female though.
All right, that's female. Okay. Do you have any males to that level?
No. She had one baby last year, and that one is a female also, and she's the one I artificially inseminated with nothing.
Okay.
And the one I just pulled up might be a male.
Okay. Okay.
But, that's a wait and see. The dad that produced her is from the male I got from you to Flame Magma from Fen. And, he's pretty good red. Not the best camera, but, he's got red up and down, but he's not my best, per se, from a color perspective. But both parents were 70% red coverage.
Okay. Yeah. Man, I feel like we're a broken record with a lot of these conversations, but I really think a lot of this stuff in Skinks is just going to be found out to be line bred traits. I do think the day's going to come we're going to start having a lot of genetic anomalies pop up that might be considered simple recessive, but incomplete dominant on some stuff, of course. But, I don't know if this stuff's passed on this way, man. Like you said, when I see that really light female ears, I should just send you one of my best Turner White red males that I have, and you could breed them together and see if they all come out completely pale. And if you take an unrelated pair and breed them together and you're getting something that's lacking all black pigment, I don't know if it could be considered a morph or if it could be considered, a line-bred trait, which is a morph in itself. I don't know.
The hard part on that, from different lines, you can get that too.
It's fair, and that's definitely right. I don't know, man. I really wish this stuff was faster moving. Even on some of the things I've gone on my end, it might be 3-4 years before I even have an answer on some simple things I'm doing. And there's some stuff I've worked on for a while that honestly I never even got to what the goal was. Some things, honestly, it hit a wall after a couple of generations, didn't go exactly how I thought it would, and I kind of started treating them more like normals, I guess. I don't know, man. Like I said, I don't have the answers, and I'm really not trying to go against what your thoughts on the project are because you put a lot of effort or a lot of work into it.
Well, I'm still not sure, to be honest, and
but we'll probably know sooner than later. But no, yeah, it's a tough one, man. Like I said, I'm really such a big hype man for Turner White, and that's another tough thing, man. Where can you even find any good Turner White in the industry anymore? Ray was the only guy that was producing really great looking animals for that project, and I don't think he's producing that stuff anymore.
Yeah, Ray didn't pair anything this year. Miles has some pretty nice stuff of his, and I don't know what split between when you and Cheryl, but you and Cheryl had some nice white stuff too.
So some of the really nice red white outcross stuff I got was directly from her. And I think I got 2 really good animals from that. I think it's a 1.1, but it might be a 2 males. I don't know. Like I said, the stuff coming from Ray was always my favorite. And like I mentioned, he'd have a litter that only one was like a screamer and everything else was just basic bitch. I don't know why there's not more of that stuff out there. I think some of that stuff kind of got lost. I don't know, man.
Well, and a lot of people I talked to until recently, they didn't always hold back the most.
Pale.
When sales were good, instead, they'd sell it all or maybe keep one. And
What about in the skink pages? Like, do you see a lot of posts of people showing some really unique, like, white animals, or do people not even really post in the pages anymore?
So they do, but to be, completely honest, I have been spending less time on social media, other than like, I'll post daily, but posting a real quick and going off, I haven't seen much unique. What about any like of the odd skink mutations in the past? Any of that ever come to light, or everything lost?
I mean, we bought that stripe project at one point, or what looked like a weird striped animal, but we had them for about 5 years, never bred anything, maybe even longer. So that was kind of a dead end. I mean, we still have the sunrise stuff. We still have the sunset stuff floating around. We still have the red stuff floating around. We still have some Turners floating around. And I can't think of any mutation other than the Fen White that really never got off the ground that would have been like that one thing the hobby would have had to work with. I mean, that's probably the main one, in all honesty. We never really had mutations in the United States. There was rumors of mutations, rumors of albinos, rumors of this, rumors of that, but like we never really had anything really crazy, in my opinion.
You once in a while you hear of, well, I guess a lot of those were more like Indonesian random unique stuff that would come over, not stuff that would pop up much.
Wow. Well, yeah, I mean, there's been a couple random things we've seen come in. The IJ stuff more lately than in the past when it comes to mutations. The bubblegum stuff, I love the bubblegum. I remember when Snakes at Sunset posted those animals. Like, that was back when everyone was really hot and heavy on skinks, and even I tried to get my hands on those unsuccessfully. I'm kind of sad I didn't, but I'm also not really mad about it because I wouldn't have had the collection to back it up, and I probably wouldn't have hybridized them right away. So, I would have gone out just trying to find more IJ stock to breed it to. So I
didn't they get multiple? Sorry to cut you off. Didn't they get multiple IJs?
As in, does Heather have multiple IJs?
Yeah, like I thought they got 2 visuals at the same time.
Well, what I mean by that is I wouldn't have had other IJ stock to breed them to, and I wouldn't have necessarily hybridized them right away.
Okay.
Now, I'm fully supportive of them hybridizing it because I really want to see what that's going to look like with some northern influence. I'd be curious if it starts looking like the northern T positive that you have over in Australia, or if it's something completely different that's just always going to have its own individual look. It's just, yeah, like I said, there was an Xanthic or Anery key, or what am I talking right now?
The one Cheryl had, or are you talking?
Yeah, the key that was a random litter. 2 adults came in, or an adult gravid female came in. 1 baby came out aneurystic. Honestly, had trouble with the litter. Ended up being failed to thrive on a lot of those animals. Not really sure why, but that one was kind of over before it started, unfortunately. That's why we stopped posting about it.
Well, it makes it hard when stuff starts crashing. You don't want to really share it yet, and you get people's hopes up asking about it, and then you never can see it to fruition.
I've been there on a lot of things in the past. I hate keeping secrets when it's the only one, but it's a little embarrassing when people know you have it and then you fail at it.
Well, I mean, if I'm wrong and I'm, mistaken on me thinking mine's genetic. I'll admit it. It is what it is.
Well,
Either
it's
way,
genetic.
I'll still try to produce more.
Yeah, it's genetic. You made it. You'll make more than look like it. I think just how making it is going to be the argument at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm going to look at some males I have here. I'm not saying we have to, but like, and I've got some males from some of that Turner White stuff that's like literally white, and I'd just be really curious what it does with that stock, or vice versa. I really got to get some kind of male from you. We've been talking about it for a long time to breed to like that best Turner White female I have here that's just pure white. It would really go a long way in telling you what's going on with that. And it would actually let me know if I'm right or wrong right away.
Well, and that's kind of why I did the male that produced him to the white northern female I got from John to see if any would pop out from there, because then I would know they were the same, which none did. And next year I could breed those. All goes as planned. So I'll have some more insights then. Have you heard anything more on RGI sex shed testing? Like, I know we talked about it at one point.
Man, I got to ask those guys. It came up in conversation. It always comes up in conversation. Like I said, guys like Warren Booth said he might be able to help with that years ago, and there's other people that have brought it up. I don't know what's going on, man. I think they're just too busy with all these ball python sheds. I got a guy I'll hit up when we're done with this podcast. I'll have an answer for you next time.
Okay. Yeah, because I know they were asking, and then I heard they had enough, so I didn't send any in, and that was, I don't know, a year and a half ago now, maybe more.
Yeah, it would be great, as long as it's not super expensive.
Yeah. Did any of the shed testing or any of that go down for ball pythons?
I think he cuts deals on bulk. I guess you could say if you're going to send in like 10 or 20 or 30 or 40 sheds, I think there's a negotiable rate there. And they do run sales, everything like that. But honestly, they can't keep up with the test to start offering discounts, in my opinion.
Okay.
Like, if people weren't sending in their sheds anymore, I can understand. But like, everybody is sending in their sheds for everything at this point. I got customers buying animals from me that I'm marking het, and they're still testing my sheds for things as simple as hep hide.
So you've probably have you been utilizing it a bit for yourself then?
This will be the first year I use it. Okay. To be honest with you, I usually go out of my way not to make pos hets. This year, I went out of my way to make pos hets. I got like a double het sunset DG male, sunset puzzle from a friend. I'm going to breed it to puzzles. I'm going to breed it to sunsets. I'm going to breed it to desert ghost. And I'm going to breed it to some other random things, probably some hypo combos. And I will have to test every shed for puzzle and sunset. But other than that, I did some of that in the clown project this year. I did do a couple of pairings for puzzles. I'm going to have to test some stuff. My ball python collection is not that great, man. I keep bringing this up all the time, but like, I've gotten rid of like so many really nice ball pythons over the years that like my collection's a little simple. Nothing really like over the top. I make a few cool animals, but I haven't been super excited about stuff coming out of the incubator for the balls this year just because I'm so far behind and I'm not spending money on them anymore. If anything, I'm still trying to downsize to where I get to a number where I'm comfortable, if that makes sense.
More just fine tuning still? Like, I know you.
I don't know if fine tuning, yes. Like I said, based on my new building, what the bills are going to look like and everything else, I do need to make changes on what I'm working with. And I am starting to lean towards maybe going more colubrid. I've always liked the colubrid projects. There's a million that I want to work with that I just never have. With the ball pythons, like I said, I don't develop enough. I just try to make ingredients for other people to develop on their end. Like, it's very rare that I sit on things. This upcoming breeding season in the fall, there will be a lot of things that I've worked out over the years that I'm actually going to breed together to make new stuff. But before that, a lot of these projects have been produce them. I get a good offer and I just sell them.
Oh, that makes it hard. You know, you got to keep the lights on. Here's a question someone asked. Wouldn't a high white, gray and black be good to a high white Turner white?
So I can't say yes, I can't say no for this reason. When I breed Turners, I'm doing it to eliminate all the gray and all the black pigment. So you could run into something where if the black pigment's strong enough, because I've even thought about that with my Diana black animals that we have, to breed that to the really nice Turner. But I could end up somewhere in the middle where I just make a classic skink because they both cancel each other out. Or I could have something that has maybe white on the back, stronger, bolder black diamonds on the side, let's say. I don't know. It's not super high on my list. I'd rather somebody else try it first. So I encourage you to do it because you never know.
So on one of my lines of my reduced black stuff, one of the males is actually from a pitch black to a super pale.
Okay.
And he has like no black. And, you know, he's reduced. And so it does vary is where I'm going.
So I have a couple really pale animals here that I haven't even put Turner White near yet. But I have like a really nice pale male and about 2 or 3 pale females. I just keep breeding them back to each other. I haven't really outbred them to see what they'll do with some of the other things going on in the hobby.
Oh, and see, like the Turner I did have, you know, I did that to pale to make paler stuff, but I kind of got rid of a lot of that with the whites coming out. That and, you know, mine wasn't straight Turner. It was relatively high white, but still had a lot of black on it.
Yeah.
And so do you think it's better to try to get some older lines, or is it better to have some of the more, depending on it, outcrossed that's not a straight sunset, a straight sunrise, or it don't matter?
If the quality's there, the body structure is good, I don't think it matters. You know, I haven't seen a good Turner White made in 5 years. Personally, that was just a nice pure Turner White, and not even like necessarily completely pure. A nice light animal. I mean, Miami Snow at Tiki, absolutely stunner. Probably one of the best males I've ever seen. And again, back to the female we got from Ray here. Amazing female. Everything in between over the years has been different degrees, but never as pale as these animals. And even some of the old Turner stock animals still had some like black on their sides a little bit. I don't know if people didn't work with Turner because it just makes a white skink and that bored people, but like I chat it up. I keep bringing it up. I chat it up. I think there's really something special about the Turner gene. And like I said, I should probably take one of my Turner male outcrosses and breed it back to that female this year just to see if I can start getting more white stock. I would love a rack that was just simply a bunch of white animals in it that weren't like the Ivory Project, weren't necessarily like the Fen Project, like just something that developed there because the Turner animals just look different. And they're very attractive. When people come over and I open up those bins, it's always their favorite animal. That's
you think it?
Yeah, I got to manage the project better because, like I said, there's really nobody out there with good stock right now. And if there is, I'd love to see it.
Do you think part of it, you know, as babies, they kind of look bland, and a lot of what's been produced has been mixes that weren't the best?
I mean, that could have a lot to do with it. But I will say, like, you know, it's pretty obvious, like a lot of this stuff. The one we got from Ray at Daytona, they weren't very big. It was August. So those animals were only about a month or 2 old. That animal stood out from everything else. So you could stand like across the aisle and look at his table, and you could see how light that animal was compared to everything else he had there. So I think some of this stuff will stand out as babies, and I think some people do sell the animals a little early because I have had some pale out. But I just think some of them are just exceptional. I don't really have an answer, man. Like I said, I've tried outcrossing it so much since I've had that project. I've never really had a good white to breed to a good white. Next year will be the first time. And like I said, I got to decide if I want to keep going down other rabbit holes with other colors for that, or if I want to just start making nice white animals again.
Well, and it makes it harder because on some of mine, I selectively chose the ones without that white to get that solid lava looking orange, you know.
Yeah, having a few bad years breeding and not making as many as I want. A lot of times the best stuff I'm trying to make, I really got to put more time into it because I'm treating the best the same way I'm treating my classics. Like where this year you focused on really just trying to progress certain projects. I treat everyone so equally sometimes in my breeder season. And yes, I do think in my head it's try to make as many as possible. But next year with that female, I would like to be a little more focused on her. And there's a few other girls in my collection I like to focus on more. Because sometimes I think I'm thinking too much quantity and less about quality.
Well, and some of the, I guess, good and bad, you know, a lot of what I have is that. So it makes some of it harder, you know, especially like the quick low end sales, you know, where say you do a classic, you're fine selling one quick at, you know, we'll say classic price, whatever, you know, where I'm going to hold them back at least a month to see what happens.
Yeah. I'm usually about a month myself with all babies. A lot of the species I work with, it's a month and a half or 2 months old before I even think about selling them. Skinks are a little different. They come out hardy. They're ready to go. They're always really good feeders. I don't mind selling them in that first month. But, you know, too, with the way my collection's built, man, I've got 16 females that are classics, like basic classics that I literally have because I want animals for the pet market. And then the rack next to that is more red stuff and more white stuff with a little bit of yellow mixed in there. Rack next to that is like all outcrossed red stuff that I have just for more reds. Then the rack after that is pretty much all like Diana animals or other dark animals I've found over the years. Yellow is what I'm lacking, man. I only have like 2 yellow animals in my entire collection, maybe 3 I consider yellow. Yellows, I don't see enough yellow. I would like an entire rack of yellow. I would like a rack of every color, to be honest with you, and they all be perfect.
What's odd, and I don't know why, like the more yellow oranges and yellows, I've had less demand for it. Like even the ones last year that were like phenomenal or pretty, you know, 70% color coverage or above, they went lower than expected.
So you don't know when something's going to be popular. And, you know, I keep on making the comparison to Crested Gecko community thought. At one point, reds were $500, $600, $700 in that community. And then they dipped down to almost a couple $100, and oranges became popular, and everyone wanted to pay for oranges. And then it was about the Harlequins, and then it was about pinstripes, and all of a sudden Dalmatians. Like, typically the way these communities work is whatever they see the least of, you get a higher demand for it because people want what they can't have. So I can't really say if yellow is ever going to be anything crazy. The way the market is, in my opinion, I don't really have anything that I would think would sell for more than $500 or $600 unless that had something to do with my Turner White stuff. Everything else in my collection, an exceptional dark stuff. I think I can still get good money for the real nice dark stuff, but I feel like sunrise, sunset, reds, and everything in between is kind of fallen into that like $500 average regardless of quality.
I price them differently on the quality.
As you should.
There are some that stick around that at higher prices we'll go with.
Well, that's because we have a lack of investment money coming in, and just like me not wanting to put more in this year, there's probably a lot of other skink breeders that have the same mindset. If they're not going to make a ton, they might not want to put a ton back in. Where back in the day, 7 years ago, 6 years ago, like everybody was pouring everything back in because they were doing so well. I do think, I keep on saying, this community is going to have a comeuppance, I guess you could say, get back to where it was a few years ago. But the reason we're not getting there is because we're not wowing anybody with what we're doing. Like, nobody's making overly exceptional animals. We're not like, other than the fact that Heather is about to incorporate a lot of mutations into things, you know, the fact that I say I haven't seen a good Turner White in 5 years is the truth. There hasn't been a good Turner White made in the hobby in like 5 years. Even like some of the dark stuff for a minute with Diana and Rebecca and what Frank was doing.
I know Frank still has some he's working with.
All right. But we'll have more people that'll want to be part of this if there's something to look at. But like, I really think there's a lack of quality in the hobby right now. And the sad thing is there's so many quality skinks out there. We shouldn't be running into this issue.
Well, and I guess a positive, you know, with the amount I produce this year, I'll be holding less back of the nice stuff.
Okay.
But
it's good, bad.
Yeah, even then, though, some, how do I put it? Some of my previous stuff went overseas. I'm curious. I have had no luck on that. Do you think that's ever going to open up on exporting?
I don't necessarily think there would ever reason it would. I think it's harder to change a law than anything. What would be their motivation to let us do that? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't see one. Even like my permit or our permit, like probably just expired today or any day. We'll say it's expired because it's good for 3 years. You know, they told me, well, we'll send it to the export experts and get back to you. Yeah, they don't get back to you.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a benefit. You know what I mean? Like I don't. Once they put those laws in place, there's really no reason for them to change them. Now I have heard of some lawsuits behind the scenes that could maybe change some of that stuff, but yes, it's always going to affect us. But I also don't think we're making enough skinks in the United States that we couldn't have a strong market in the United States. Like I said, there's a lack of excitement in that species. And with that lack of excitement, you're just not going to get new money.
Yeah. Well, I think with this year and then I think even next year will be bigger with more, I would imagine more double visuals being produced.
So, you know, people who listen to us talk a lot. We talk about how when the excitement started in the hobby in the United States for blue tongue skinks, it coexisted with Joe Ball making some of the coolest blue tongue skinks you've ever seen. And again, I know that had a big effect on people here getting excited. And again, we talked about the bar check factor. But I'm just going to, I've already said it like 4 times and it sounds like I'm shitting on the community, but we're not making crazy cool things anymore. And we should be. And the cool things we are making, I don't think are getting marketed properly because yes, I understand I'm not in any skink groups. I get a lot of animals shared that I see on Facebook of different species all day long. Other than Heather stuff popping up in my feed, I don't see a lot of skink content being shared by non-skink people. You know what I mean? So I think if people like you and I and Cheryl and the many other people in the hobby doing Manny, there's a bunch of other names I'm going to leave out. Don't worry, I'm thinking about you. But like, if people went out there and started making some really nice animals and they started getting more traction and they started becoming more relevant on social media, I think that this community would honestly be better off. I don't know why the artistry isn't there right now. And maybe this year there will be some stuff out there that's going to be unbelievable. But honestly, I think for 5 years, it seems like this community's been on autopilot. And there's been a lot of excuses, bad breeding seasons by guys involved like me, you, and other people. But we did such a large bump up in 5 years. I don't know why it feels like we slowed down the last 5 years. Like the quality went so like from like 2014 to like 2019, the quality of the skink was unbelievable. Like we went from a lot of basic looking stuff and some like sunset and sunrise and whatever else to it seemed like it boomed. Really nice reds hit the market. It just seemed like everything was so much nicer. Ray Gerge was having great years, and there was always something new and unique popping up out of his stuff. We had that Swedish pastel line stuff coming over, which is really exciting. We were looking at Don Patterson's pictures all the time. He was posting of just absolute bangers. I don't see any of it. Like, it's just nothing is happening around me in the skink community. Nothing's happening here. I got no excuses. I got to be better, but nothing is happening in my opinion.
So, I'll ask you that one later.
You sure?
How about this then? What's one thing that you would like to see in the reptile breeding world happen in the next 5 years?
In the breeding world, like all species?
Yeah, however you want, you can answer it. Just skinks, all species,
Well, in my opinion, I think we gotta keep doing what we're doing right now across the board in the reptile community, because honestly, from the bottom up, a lot of things look a lot better. There is some policing happening in the hobby that is a little beneficial. I think the platforms we have to use to sell these animals are expanding. I think there's going to be a lot of new people that come into the hobby as companies like Palm Street keep expanding. I don't think we're going in the wrong direction right now. I honestly think across the board with the technology incorporated into breeding and everything, I generally think we're doing everything right now. And we're honestly getting better every year because, people are coming up with new ways of doing things, better ways of doing it. Like we talked about RGI, man. RGI completely changed ball python breeding. It'll change hognose breeding. It'll change boa breeding when those days come. It'll change things for blue tongue skinks when we can actually sex the animals. They become a lot more investable when people aren't guessing what they're buying. I think we're going in the right direction. Personally, I don't know what I'd really say we need to improve on, because honestly, I think across the board we're doing well. I think, yes, within every species there's something we can say we can improve on, but I honestly think the reptile industry is doing awesome right now.
Do you have any plans to do any live Palm Street auctions, or have you looked into that all?
I don't even do morph market auctions. I think I saw on one of my house snake breeding pages today that someone's going to go on there, and I thought he implied in the title he's going to auction off 100 animals in an hour. I think that was the implication.
That might be Reach Up Reptiles.
I'll double check. It might have been, maybe somebody made a post for him.
I saw they're doing 100 animals, and it was like a house snake in the picture Friday.
Okay. So I don't know if it's 100 house snakes. I don't know if there's going to be a couple house snakes in there. But I would probably watch that for two reasons. One, if it is house snake related and they go cheap, I'll probably buy a couple house snakes. Two, I want to see the interaction of the seller with the buyer. That's one thing. MJ says sometimes that he thinks I could do a podcast where I just sit and talk by myself. I don't think so. Sometimes I can't even get a straight answer out when I talk to anybody. So I don't think I'm right for it. So Palm Street, I don't have enough of a social media following that I think I can go on Palm Street and do well at it. And I don't mind giving a couple animals away now and again, but I don't really know what the benefit of that's going to be, because I haven't heard of anybody selling anything on there for a reasonable amount of money. Like, have you seen any blue tongue skink breeders go on there yet?
So there was one person I know that breeds blue tongues that went on there, but I don't know if she had any available when she went on there.
All right.
I'll let you know in 2 weeks.
Let me know. Snake Discovery Emily would probably do great. Reach Out Reptiles probably do great. I know Tristan was selling geckos on there from Gecko Junkies. I'm sure he sold a lot of animals. I've just heard of some of the really low numbers that have been on some of these high-end ball python projects put on there, which really isn't a good market for a thing like that. I do think there's a lot of pet animals that'll actually probably do really well on there. And I think if there was like if Emily of Snake Discovery went on there with a blue tongue skink, I think it goes for her retail price or higher. And that's my opinion. If we go on there, I would be hoping for half a retail and again, maybe hope for the best, but I got to start paying more attention to it. So I got a stuffy nose. I got to blow it in a minute. I haven't paid enough attention to have a really anything to say on it other than what I've heard in secondhand. In secondhand, I've just heard a lot of animals have gone really cheap. But if you use the morph market auction, you might feel the same way. So I think anytime you're talking about an auction platform where you're going to take what you get, you have to have real low expectations because you don't know what's going to happen going into it. And yes, if you market it in a way where you get people watching your live, that's one thing. But like, I know some of these lives only have 20 or 30 or 40 people watching. Is it up to you to bring that on? Does Palm Street do something to showcase people's live auction events? And if they are, how do they pick who to actually promote? Are they just going with the social media characters that they sponsor right now? Like, I don't know exactly how you get eyes on it other than doing all the work yourself.
I think that's the majority.
Yeah. You're putting that much work in, I'm sure you could make sales that actually having to go on and auction animals. But I'm not going to pretend like auctions are a bad thing. When you need money, auctions are guaranteed money. As long as you have, whatever your expectations are, let them be. But again, at the end of the month, if I can't pay a bill, I'll throw some animals on auction. I talk about the reptile ring all the time. The reptile ring was amazing, but it was invite only. I want to say there was 4 to 6 breeders on there, maybe 8, and a huge customer base who used to watch all these auctions worldwide. Ben Rennick used that under Mike Wilbanks because Mike Wilbanks owned the site, put it together. Ben did amazing on there. Like, Ben did so well on there that there were some points where I think he was putting most of his animals on there because he was making so much money. Palm Street's different. Morph Market's different. There could be 5,000 animals up at auction this week by 5,000 different breeders, and that could go for both Palm Street and that. On Reptile Ring, it was just a few guys, and because of it being invite only, they made a lot of money. But I don't know, man. I'm going to start paying more attention because I probably need to at this point. I only think a few people will probably do well on Palm Street, and I'm sure it's just maybe a fad that'll pass. I think after people go on there and only make 15% of what the value of the animal is, after a while, they're going to get bored of doing that.
Yeah, it makes it not worth to, put the effort in where you're potentially losing money and wasting time.
I heard about $4,000 ball pythons going for $500 out there. And not like $4,000 ball pythons that nobody gave a shit about. Like $4,000 ball pythons that actually people are still out there hunting for. They gave it a shot. I know the people who did it. You got to give it a shot, but sometimes you're going to do that and you're just not going to get what you think you might get out of it.
I have heard that when other reptile ones end, the algorithm's supposed to keep them in reptile-related ones, but I don't know. Depending on who's watching, they might not be buying anything still.
Yeah. I mean, I would like to know what the average price of a reptile in general goes for on there. Like, I wonder if there's like a flat number where they could be like, yeah, out of all of these thousands of auctions we had, average them all together, and is it $125? Is it $90? Is it $1.75? Like, what is the average price of an animal selling on Palm Street, regardless of what the value is in the industry?
That'd be nice to know, but I don't think they'll share that.
I'd have to ask a guy who would have to ask a guy who'd have to ask a guy. I'm really not in that part of the community.
Yeah, me either.
I mean, I know people that are dealing with it directly. I know people that are pushing it, but I guess I haven't really had a good conversation with it on that side of things. I probably should make time for that.
Well, I think we kind of peaked on that, I suppose. That might have been majority of what I got. Was there anything you wanted to ask me before? Or
I thought this was going to be more of a casual conversation and less of you interviewing me, to be honest with you. I thought we were just going to talk about how defeated we were as men and how we fail at breeding lizards. I didn't really know what the conversation was going to be.
I always have a half plan and wing it.
Okay. It's good to have a half plan.
I did one thing I don't think I mentioned, I did have 2 stillborn litters and 2 slug outs. So like a lot of the ones that I did pair multiple times did do something.
Yeah. Okay.
So not a complete failure, but
So, what do you think contributes to your slug outs? Is it just because you had multiple locks on those females, you said, or at least 2 locks?
so one of them I am 99% sure is the male himself. This is the first year I've got successful babies on him out of like 5 females. If he didn't do anything this year, it was the last year I was going to breed him.
Yeah.
Um, I do wonder if maybe he's got a low sperm count. I did not get a microscope and count him or anything like that. But he is from unrelated parents too, so it's not even anything like that.
Okay.
The
I
ones
didn't go through all my males I bred this year and figure out how many litters I got per male. We kind of talked about this. It'd be nice if there was some kind of supplement you could put in your male's diet that might like up his libido a little bit. Maybe you get a higher sperm count.
when I talk,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
when I talked to, it might have been James Fenn, but it's been a couple years, so don't quote me on that. I believe it was vitamin E that they were giving.
Okay.
Skinks that weren't the best breeders. I tried it 1 year on my male blotch that doesn't like blotches, and it didn't do anything.
Okay.
You know, either way, it was Reptile safe supplement, so a little extra vitamin, didn't hurt.
All right. So it's a supplement that they're giving because I Googled it and it's what? Oils, nuts, seeds, fruits, and vegetables. I'm sure there's more details than that. Certain vegetables, certain oils, so on and so forth. I don't think I'd want to put nuts in the diet. Is it safe to feed a skink avocado?
I don't think so, but I'm not sure.
Mangoes, though. Mangoes is okay, right?
Yeah.
All right. Kiwi, which I wouldn't do kiwi. Too expensive. So maybe add some mango, some spinach, some red bell peppers, green turnips. I don't think you can do broccoli. Eggs, tuna, fish in general. I've heard nothing but bad things.
Yep.
Or you can just do a supplement and hope to God it's actually right.
Well, and another person I talked to, he ended up, I believe, with no babies this year.
Okay.
And he spread his pairings out. I want to say 2 to 3 days, but the only thing we're thinking maybe he stopped too early.
Okay. I may have stopped early. That could be a reason. You'd think we'd have more answers, man, but I don't know why some of my females have these small preemie babies when they're kept in the same settings as females that give me really nice big babies.
The one similarity I noticed on mine this year, one of them I had in more of a higher ambient setup, and they had bigger, healthy babies. And one of the ones I had in a lower setup were smaller. Could have just been random. She also, I think, held them a little longer.
All right. So my girls higher in the rack are probably kept a little higher. They're in the same room. They're in the same rack system, all side by side. Same lighting. Humidity's gonna be the same. I think my one female gave me like 15 small babies, just not developed big enough to survive. One of my other females, she was a little smaller when I bred her, but she was older. Same thing, couple slugs, a lot of dead babies.
Yeah, I don't think it's the age.
What was that?
I don't think it's the age.
No, I don't think it's age. I think, like I said, she's probably about 3-4 years old. she probably need to be a little bigger. I never really, you know me, man. I never really get them super big, and that one I think I took my sweet old time. It was probably about what the size of like a year and a half animal in your collection is, maybe smaller. But no, I don't know, man. It was a little sporadic. I haven't really taken a minute to like write down notes from this season. I've been so busy with everything. But I would like I said, I know my one dark male had a very successful year. Probably had the highest percentage of females go out of everything I had.
Yeah.
I got a male from Fenn that's an older male. I bred into a bunch of classics. He's one of the males that took down like 7, maybe 8 females. I'll see how many litters that were actually good from him, but I think there might have been like 3, maybe 4 good litters from him. Not on the high side, smaller side for babies. I don't know, man. Like I said, I got babies, but I still really consider this year to be very unsuccessful.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I was hoping to be more sure on what I had this year, like genetic wise.
Maybe next year.
Well, and the one that I talked to you, that the male I did breed to a classic, that female, she had stillborn, so that kind of doesn't tell me much. They looked lighter, like hypo-ish looking, but that I ain't counting that. They could have just been like not developed enough, or just who knows.
Yeah.
But that male I did breed to this female this year, so if the one I posted and pulled up is a visual, at least I would know he is, so I could breed him to that female maybe to. What?
Well, I think in 3 years we'll know what the fuck you have going on over there. Because I think we still need to outbreed to breed it back. I think
The one I'm talking was outbred.
It was? To a normal? Did you make some normal looking babies?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, she's got some orange to her because it's the classic's got some orange on her, but it's
pretty basic.
Yeah.
Compared to the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I kind of go back to talking about the community really quick, but like, who's posting even showing off their work anymore? Like, is there like a little bragging rights going on? Are there like cool things ever being posted, or is it more just pet people showing off their pets?
Well, and I think some of the issue, even myself, I haven't posted a ton in the groups with the algorithm wanting more reels. I primarily do more of those instead of just pictures, so I don't fill up the group with those. So
Does Manny even post that many animals? Like,
no.
Yeah. So everybody who's doing stuff just isn't even showing off their work anymore.
Some, like, Manny will post random stuff. I post daily on all of mine, but I don't share them all to every group because I don't want to overdo it either.
Fair.
And, I know Cheryl randomly does. Heather randomly does. But, yeah, there's less out there.
Gotcha. Well, maybe next year. Because, I mean, I'll post some this year, but, a lot of what I post this year will be a lot of my old work. And whatever I'm doing this year, I can think of like 5 animals I think they're going to be standout. I'm really excited about out of 50. And don't get me wrong, there's going to be some good examples in there too, other than the ones I like. But I can only think about 5 skinks I'm like super excited about that I even want to post about this year.
Well, and I got some that I will, and some I've been waiting to shed to see what they're ending up like too. Like, and I guess I try not to overdo it to try to seem like I guess I'm bragging either.
Well, if you got it, show it. Like I said, there's a real lack of excitement, and I think more content would be better. Even us talking about the podcast, I think this is a step in the right direction. But it'd be nice if more people showed off their work more.
Like I'm pretty sure it's polygenic.
It's a cool one. I like that. I've seen that.
I got a lot of the other siblings are similar, solid orange with no black too, but yeah, I guess the best way to put it, we all need to do a little more.
We've been saying it for 3 years, but like I said, I've even wanted to do, like we talked about, videos where you take like a male and breed it to like 4 or 3 females that are completely different than him, but you'd have to hold all the babies back for a little while, and then you can just talk about genetics, maybe talk about how certain things are passed on, how there's certain animals in certain groups who might actually be able to take out and breed back to each other to create a new line that we haven't messed with yet. Like I said, I think we can key into this a little bit better. I'm kind of scared. A lot of us are just trying to produce pets right now, and none of us are trying to produce investment animals.
A lot of mine, I guess I tried to.
I think you do. I didn't say everybody.
Yeah. But I guess more people are scared. I don't know if scared's even a way to put it. Like,
disinterested?
What's that?
Maybe disinterested in posting. I mean, disinterested in even showing the work off. Like I said, I haven't made a skink post in like 5 years, maybe 6 years.
Well, and part of that too, like a lot of times people would post, they'd get shit on, or people would be assholes to them, so they wouldn't want to post.
I don't think it's that way anymore, though, is it?
No, it's not anymore. But that could be right. Some of the reason there are, no one's perfect.
What's the most active skink page on Facebook right now?
From a number standpoint, probably the hobbyist.
Blue Tongue Skink Hobbyist?
Yeah, and being one of the admins, all of us are busy with some of the issues. Like, there were more active.
Okay. So I'm not on that page, I don't think. So I'm trying to find it. It hasn't popped up yet. I'm on Blue Tongue Skink Breeders, I think. This is the point I'm making.
Well, I think that's a good point, that what we're saying, that overall we should start sharing more of what we're doing, even if that means I got to do pictures and reels or something.
Yeah. I don't even see Blue Tongue Skink Hobbyist on here. It didn't give me that option when I put in Blue Tongue Skink Hobbyist. Is that right? Blue Tongue Skink Hobbyist?
Yeah, unless it's like you got like an extra S on Skinks or something.
Call me stupid?
Blue Tongue Skink Hobbyist.
Yeah, I got Blue Tongue Skink Hobbyist on my phone, and it shows Blue Tongue Skink Exchange Global, Blue Tongue Skink Adoption and Rehoming, Blue Tongue Skink. You guys have me blocked? You got me fucking blocked, buddy?
That's what it sounds like.
I think you fucking have me blocked.
I'm pulling it up now to see the hard part. Like, so this is the one Debbie was the main person and she died.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'll be honest. I think I'm blocked, buddy. Look at it's not even an oh, it's fault. Yeah.
Because like the people that are here, we kind of just got past it, so to speak.
So you don't have to feel bad. I don't mind being blocked. I get used to this kind of stuff. I hear it's because I'm an asshole.
Could be.
Yeah, I think the only group I'm still on, it looks like it's Blue Tongue Skinks, and that's it.
I'll have to figure out how I see where blocked is, and we'll do that off the podcast.
Yeah, just let me know. No, I'm curious. Yeah. Because if that's where everyone's hanging out, maybe I'll come and hang out a little bit.
Oh, I think that's the hard part. There's less hanging out, more random busyness.
Gotcha. Oh, yeah. Let me know. I think I'm blocked. Should we end on that note? Me being blocked from the community. You're an admin, motherfucker. What is going on right now?
You are blocked. I found where it was.
Oh, cool.
I wonder if it tells me why or not.
Yeah, see if there's like a little post-it note on that.
No, I unbanned you.
Well, I don't really give a fuck about your stupid group, buddy.
Like, I'm sure I could go back far enough and figure out maybe why you were banned, but I'd have to like search like way back on that.
Oh wow, you guys got 26,000 members. You're right. There's a lot of people in that group. Yeah. I just said joined. That all makes sense now, fuckers. Hey,
I didn't do it.
Hey, you're an admin.
Oh, I told you I was an admin. I got invited, and then she died.
Fair.
Well,
that was fun. I think that was the peak of the podcast right there. That was my
I think that's part of the reason why you're not seeing stuff.
Yeah, so I'm completely out of the loop.
I'm gonna have to check later and see how many other people are banned too.
Yeah, see if there's anybody else that we got to unban now. I don't know, man. I'm sure there's some gems in there.
Well, and what's hard, I'm sure there were some individuals that might have done stuff that deserved it.
What are you saying?
Oh, not you, just in general.
What if I deserved it? You don't know that.
Oh, maybe. Were you sending odd pictures or?
No, nothing like that.
Well, that's good at least.
I'll be honest. I think it's because I had the toffee project.
Oh, and being a hybrid?
Yeah, because I own those 2 hybrids. I think that got me banned from every page.
I wonder. No, man, he's not banned. He's in it.
Oh, it could be because I'm an asshole, man. I don't know. It's really hard to say at this point.
Well, I just wanted to double check because there was that one time, however many years ago, he had hybrids that he was selling for some run, and people got mad about it.
Gotcha.
But
you know what's funny? I already want to unfollow that page. I'm so aggravated right now.
Oh.
Really takes me back, man. The good old days.
Well, as you see, it's a lot of newer, younger breeders. That some of them have been in it longer. Jeremy's been in it since birth, it seems.
Yeah, I gotta talk to Jeremy, man. He's invited himself out a few times, and I keep on saying yes and no. I gotta just say yes this past time. I saw he was doing a little fishing, I think, out in the Boston area. That he was doing striper in a kayak.
Yeah,
a flounder too.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. I've never, talked to him in person, but he's intelligent.
Oh, I like Jeremy.
But he's one of the same things, just kind of busy.
Fair. He works.
Well, if anyone's looking for something, custom scales still the best way.
Yeah. Don't be afraid to block me.
I wonder if that one is.
Oh, I don't know, man. I've probably changed the company name 4 times since then. I'm sure Morph Graphics is blocked on there.
Doesn't look like it, no.
Okay, nice. There you go. RL Exotics?
No?
Okay, good.
Well, and those ones might have just not been in the group, so they never did.
There you go, man. That's probably the exact reason why.
Like, a lot of these names are just random ones I've never heard of.
Well, I guess it's nice to be back again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll end the stream. If thanks for everyone for coming on season 2, episode 2. And we're gonna sweet talk Dave into coming to co-host one of them. Which one it is, will surprise you.
It's gonna be a surprise for me too.
Maybe you'll be on the next one.
Maybe if you invite me, I might just be here, buddy.
Thanks again.